there's not one thing that drives addiction, right? And I'll give you an example of that. Painkillers are the perfect example, right, of a different kind of addiction, right? It's like the tolerance and the need for the medication, right? Now we're talking brain chemistry and withdrawal and tolerance that's not really found in some of the party drugs. And you see it really blew up in our generation, this addiction that is really just based off the physical dependency of the substance itself, which you're not going to find in someone binge drinking on alcohol. But if I had to step away and say, what do I think drives addiction? And I think it's the lack of healthy relationships.
Dr. Miller, welcome to the podcast.
I appreciate being honorarily asked to be on here. So it's awesome.
It's such a full circle moment for me. I just even want to start with a little bit of a story here of when I first met you at Real Recovery about 15 years ago. We're talking about, I was there. I met you. You're up on like a huge motorcycle. You pulled up and then there was the dog Brody. And so my brother's name is Zachary Miller, and Brody the dog was there. And I'm like, I don't know why. Like, I apparently I need to be here.
Right. You know? I love that, man. It just, man, I'll tell you, back then is almost like a blur for me now. It feels like this is kind of crazy, but like a reptile, right? Like shedding their skin. Like, obviously we're not reptiles, but over the course of working thousands of hours with people, it feels like about every 4 to 5 years, if you're doing work, you kind of like shed your skin. So 15 years ago feels like 3 lives ago, if that makes sense. You know, it was a wild time back then, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, it really does feel like a snake losing its skin, and we wear our emotions layer by layer. So I just want to talk. I want you to give the listeners a background of your story, because I know how far you've come, and I've always looked up to you. I want you just to give a background of who you are and where you came from.
I love that, man. Yeah, it's been a while since I've actually done that. You know, I used to do it a lot, and so I'm probably a little rusty. I guess and I'm working on a book in the background, but when that'll be done, it could be 10 years. I don't know. But I've had it since those times we were talking about, right? I came up with the title, and it's kind of a full circle joke, because the name of the book is going to be GED to PhD, the memoirs of a drug addict. And I remember early recovery, sitting on the steps of a sober living house, joking about getting my PhD one day. And I was in like community college trying to get like my associate's degree, you know? And then now I'm sitting here and I have my PhD, and it just feels, it's really wild. So if we're looking back in a story perspective, right, it's interesting when you ask, drug addicts, alcoholics, or people with severe mental health, their stories, if they've been in kind of the 12-step world, because their stories can be a little distorted based on the people that they're around, right? Like if you go, for example, right? Like seriously, like if you go to a like let's just say a 12-step meeting, and it's the person telling their story for the first time, right? First time telling, they're up in front of their peers and they're telling their story. It's going to start of this terrible story with this terrible childhood with, you know, all these unfair acts happening to them. And then if you kind of had a time lapse and jump to that person 7, 8, 9, 10 years down the road telling their story, it's going to be completely different. Right. They're going to have a different perspective. And that's true for me. Right. I used to say the same thing. Oh, I had this terrible childhood, you know, growing up in the trailer park and, you know, this, that. And when I look back on it, like, I wish my kid had the same type of childhood that I had. You know? Riding 4-wheelers and hanging out and dirt bikes and playing paintball in the sand pits and just kind of running wild. Now, I had a single mom, right? I have an alcoholic father. These are facts. But at the end of the day, like, it wasn't this terrible thing that I made it out to be, to feel a part of the other people who had these terrible stories. And that's not to say that terrible things don't happen to people. I had many terrible things that happened to me, but that doesn't mean I had a bad childhood either. Right.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense at all. I would say a defining moment for me in my childhood, I was actually talking about this the other day, it comes up for me every couple of years, is it was April 9th of 1999. And I watched one of my best friends. I say one of my best friends. I had like 3 or 4 of them, right? Kind of this little crew. And I watched him die. Right. And at this point, I had already been into the drugs and the smoking weed. And, you know, I hadn't really been introduced to the Oxycontin yet.
Right.
But, you know, this event happened and I really used it to fuel this idea of being chaotic in my life, if that makes sense, you know. And it was tragic, bro, right? Like it was, you know, you're big into the brain injuries. And I tell this story. I remember, so we were out hanging out, and I'll make this quick, but we were out hanging out at the sand pits where we ride 4-wheelers, and we were swimming, and one of our buddies went and jumped on his 4-wheeler, no helmets, right? We didn't wear helmets. We were stupid.
Yeah.
And he wrecked it. And a couple guys had come over to us and said, "Hey, we think your buddy's hurt." And, so we ran over, and man, I can still picture it today. Talk about trauma, right? And like the way memories work. Like I can see it when I close my eyes, him laying there, and he had bled so fast out of his head that he had this huge gash all the way to the bone, and there was no blood, right? Because it was a sand pit. So everything was just setting on top of the sand. It's very visual, right? And that fueled me for many years, right? That fueled me of like, well, you only live once, kind of that BS mantra.
Right.
That people love to grab onto, right? People love to grab onto these little mantras and run down. But my childhood and coming through really changed around the Oxycontins, you know? They were pivotal. You know, I don't know if you have an experience with those or not. Did you ever get into the oxys?
I did, yeah. That was my drug of choice, was like oxys and painkillers and drinking with them. Those were my Achilles heel.
Yeah, man. Those oxys, man. They, I remember, you know, like I vividly remember when it kind of changed my life, right? Like it was that feeling unlike I had never felt before of like everything's gonna be okay.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
Total lie, right? Like total false bravado, whatever. But in that moment, it's almost like a spiritual experience.
It is. And I mean, Little White, and I think all of that stuff was out. I mean, Jelly Roll, and I think about him and how far he's come.
Yep.
But that was the thing back then, right?
Yeah, if you're around 40 years old, right? Like I just turned 40, like I was 15, 16, like when they first really came out. And, you know, listen, I have a 12-year-old son now, and where I was at 12 is a lot different than and I'm so grateful for that. Like, I'm so grateful that he never seen me in active addiction or had to grow up, you know, around that. Because, and not to go too far into this, but like with my mom, the single mom phenomenon, they've done a ton of studies on this, right? Like the data is out, right? Like children that grow up with a single mom, the odds are stacked against them.
Yeah.
It's not bad or good. It's not, you know, I love my mom. I have the best mom in the world, right? But the odds were stacked against us. Because especially for boys and girls for different reasons, but for boys, we need that acceptance by men. We crave that pack mentality. Like we like to act like we're all tough, but we crave that, you know. And that's something I found in recovery, right? That's something in recovery that I think really changed me, was like my intimacy with other men and the ability to have
Mhm.
intimate, healthy relationships with other healthy men.
Right.
Where when I was a kid, I just wanted someone to want me to be around, right? And the
Mhm.
sad part is the people that I chose
Yeah.
were people that tattooed 13-year-old kids, like
Yeah.
those aren't probably the best people for a 13-year-old to be hanging around.
Right. That's so fascinating, man. And I want to talk about, what do you feel? It's a complicated question, but what do you feel drives addiction? Because from my perspective, it's a mix of trauma, it's a mix of influence, it's a mix of psychology. But what drove your addiction, and what do you see that drives people's addictions?
Whew, that is a grenade of a question,
Hmm.
Dr. Miller,
Yeah.
because it really does depend on the person in the situation, right? Like there's not one thing that drives addiction, right? And I'll give you an example of that, right? Like painkillers are the perfect example, right, of a different kind of addiction, right? It's like the tolerance and the need for the medication, right? Now we're talking brain chemistry and
Mm-hmm.
withdrawal and tolerance that's not really found in some of the party drugs. And
Mm-hmm.
you see it really blew up in our generation, this addiction that is really just based off the physical dependency of the substance itself, which you're not
Right.
going to find in someone binge drinking on alcohol,
Right.
So, but if I had to step away and say, what do I think drives addiction? And I think it's the lack of healthy relationships.
Yeah.
Now trauma, 100%. But then again, you look at the data, right, on trauma, it's kind of like me and you could witness the same thing. You develop PTSD, and I'm completely fine. So trauma is a tricky thing to tag as there again, it plays a significant role, and we see that in the facilities, right? Like trauma is real. Um, but as far as what causes addiction and drives it, I do think a lot of it is about the craving for like relationships, right?
Hmm.
And when you don't have those healthy relationships, you're looking for something. They call it the void, right? Or the
Yeah.
black
Yeah.
hole, right? Or, some people find it in religion, some people find it in the military, some people find it in church,
Hmm.
right? Or, what a gang or whatever it is, but it's like
Yeah.
that community.
Right. With addiction, do you feel there's a misconception about what addiction is? Because I've looked at it differently over the years when I think about social media addiction, or I mean, even just being addicted to work and stuff like that. How has your view of addiction changed over the years?
Dramatically, right?
Yeah.
And it's a great question, right? Because I mean, 30 years ago when you said the word addiction, what do you think? You
Yeah, drug
think
addicts, and
drug
people.
addicts,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
right? Like people
Mhm.
living under bridges, right?
Right.
And so I think that here's the one thing I would say, and this is with a lot of time, I used to be super into the 12-step world, right? Like
Yeah.
there is a difference between someone with a substance use disorder and then
Right.
someone who is an addict in the sense of the 12-step world, right? Those are two totally different things. And then when you look at like work addiction or sex addiction or gambling, I mean, we're talking process addiction, right? Like that's really what you're talking about. And a lot of that is like driven off the brain, right?
Mhm.
Like, which I'm
Right.
sure you're way more familiar with than I am, but that is just like dopamine, right?
Hmm.
And then the pattern developed over receiving the reward of dopamine.
Yeah, I mean, so you have physical dependency, you have a mental, emotional uh, dependency that happens over time. But can you talk about physical dependencies and some of the things that you've learned from witnessing that over the years?
Man, I'll tell you, like we have a detox, right? So
Yeah.
I get to see people physically And there again, there's a lot of levels to that too, right? Like fentanyl right now,
Mm.
I am seeing some of the worst withdrawals, right? And what is a withdrawal? It is the void, it is the separation and what happens when that physical dependency is not met, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
this fentanyl is unlike anything that I've ever seen in the severity of the person going through the withdrawal, right? So
Right.
what I would say is no question, the two most dangerous withdrawals are going to be alcohol and benzodiazepines, right? Those are the two that you can die from,
Mm-hmm.
right? But
Yeah.
as far as like watching someone go through something painful,
Mm-hmm.
fentanyl is unlike anything I've ever seen, you know.
Yeah.
It is devastating.
Do you see brain injury play a role into addiction? Do you see a
I do.
correlation?
I do. So we've had, I mean, maybe the irony is that a lot of people, and there again, I'm sure you know this, a lot of people with brain injuries are undiagnosed,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Like very few, not very often does someone come in and say, I have a brain injury, right? They don't know. They're
They don't even know that
signs,
they really had it, honestly. Like,
100%.
yeah, I mean, or they're not aware that that has anything to do with it.
100%, right? And they're trying to figure it out, and the lucky ones are able to discover, oh wow, right, this is playing a significant role in the way that my life is turning out, and then they can get whatever treatment they can for that. But I do think of a couple of clients over the years where their brain injury has had significant impact on their inability to get sober, their inability.
Right. Yes, and that was almost me. Even after real recovery, I was back off to the races. As soon as I got kicked out of there, I was like, "Fuck this,"
Sure.
basically. Yeah, and I was even worse than before. Because you got to go down again, hit rock bottom a few times. Yeah.
Man, it's we talk about that a lot. And I'll tell you, I kind of did a video on this the other day. It's an opinion, right? But I
Mhm.
find it to be very true because what I'm looking at, I'm looking at on any given time, like right now, I was just looking between my three programs, I have 85 clients,
Mm.
right? And we kind of stay between 80 and 100 patients at any given time. That's a lot
Mm.
of patience, right?
Yeah,
Like
it is.
I see it every day. And the question is, what is the difference? Like, what is the difference between the people that get sober, right? Like the us two on this call, right?
Yeah.
And the people that just can't, those people that like you, like I get kicked out. And instead of saying, hey, I need to try harder, what do?
Yeah. You go back to what you know.
You go back to what you know or what you think you know, right?
Right, what you think you know,
What
exactly.
you think is going to make it better, whatever that lie is. We love the lies, right? I
Right.
love the
You
lie.
don't think happiness is a thing at that point.
It's not for me, right?
Right.
I'm just unlucky,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like it's just unfair.
Right.
Whatever the lie is that I like to use, right?
Mhm.
Like my lie was, well, I'm choosing to do this. I'm choosing to go back to drugs and alcohol, and it's like, God, I was so stupid, man. But I didn't know, right? You don't know
Yep.
what you
Yep.
don't
You don't
know.
let you know.
But to go back again, ADD, right? To go back to the point of like, what is the difference in these people, right?
Yeah.
Like if I take two people and they're both doing what they're supposed to do, right? They're
Right.
in therapy, they're taking their meds if they have some mental health issues, they're engaged with their family, they're actively working on themselves, you know, what is the difference between the one that stays sober and the one that doesn't? And
Hmm.
again, this is an opinion of mine, but the difference is the one who can't stay sober has an inability to be uncomfortable,
Mm.
right? They
Hmm.
just, for whatever reason, they cannot allow themselves to be uncomfortable for any period of time.
Right.
You know,
Just hypothetically here, it could have something to do with their limbic system. It could have something to do with just, it not being able to take those baby steps, like those small steps in the right direction. Because I was like that too. I couldn't take discomfort of any kind until I realized that, these small steps can build momentum in your life.
It's all about the small steps. Like you're like, that's literally what it's about. You get a couple wins and now you're like, oh, cool. I mean, look at the gym, right? Look at anything that is like you need to create a behavior around. Because I'm a
Right.
behavioralist in my core, right? At
Yeah,
my
that's it.
core, it's about developing behaviors, good or bad, right? Like
Right.
if I expected to go to the gym and to get ripped in the first 3 days, I'm probably never going to be someone who goes to the gym,
Yeah.
right?
100%. Yeah.
Because it takes a lot of time and it's very uncomfortable and it's very painful to get to the point where I even start to see something develop in the mirror that looks like success.
Now, when it comes to the younger generation, so I don't know anything about what's going on out there for the most part with the younger generation. What are you seeing with their tendencies and behaviors? Because it's rough out there, with all the bull crap, the Trump, the this, the war here, that like all of the financial crap. How's that generation developing? I mean, because you have a firsthand experience.
Not well, bro.
Yeah.
So, like, I will say the rise of medium, moderate to severe mental health is unbelievable, right? Like, I've been doing this 16, almost 17 years. And I would say the last 3 years, so the first 13 years of my career, around there, I only focused on substance abuse, right?
Yeah.
And then at some point, I was confronted with the fact that that is just one small piece of the population that is struggling. And now I would say out of those 80 or so clients, 60 of them are mental health, primary, right?
Yeah.
They're using substances just to self-medicate to kind of stop some of the mental health systems, and they're younger. This is younger population, the 25 to, the 18 to 28. It is completely different than it was 20 years ago. And you're right, a lot of that is social, right? I mean, look at Instagram and Facebook. Like people don't want to my son's got like TikTok brain, right? Like he can't even watch a 50-minute Netflix show.
Right. Oh, yeah, the whole system's hijacked. Like,
and I'm sure you're all about with the brain, right? Like that is all the brain, right? Like where are we going to be in 8 or 9 years if this continues?
Right. Yeah, it's scary to think about, but I mean, at least there's people like you that are advocating for people who need that. In how do you personally deal with like resilience and adversity these days?
Man, I go back to the early days, right? Like I go back to like what worked in the beginning, to the simple things, right? Like who am I surrounding myself with? If that makes sense. And there again, it's one of the cheesy sayings. Show me your 5 closest friends, I'll show you your future. But there's no truer words. There's no truer words, right? And so when I'm kind of feeling off, or like I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I'm feeling like, man, my life is not going in the direction, the first thing I go back to is, okay, who am I surrounding myself with? Have I got away from my core group? And I got 2 or 3, really one guy, but 2 or 3 guys. And that is like my lifeline to life.
So this is a scarier question because, I'm 5 years sober now. What do you see with people? And there's no judgment here, but I've seen people that have been sober for many, many, many years. And something happens and it triggers them to go back. What would you tell people to try to avoid something like that?
This has been talked about 8,000 different ways, and there's always a different opinion on it. Again, right? I'm going to go back to community, right? Like it's all community. And if you look at people who veer off of that path, right, more than likely they're veering away from the healthy relationships. So I'll tell you a story. 6 7 years sober in Asheville, you know, I had the job. We had just sold to Pyramid Healthcare. I was the executive director. I just built a beautiful new house, right? Gorgeous house. I had a beautiful wife. I have my 2 kids, right? My son and my stepdaughter. I had everything, right? I was traveling all over the US for work and playing golf. And then something kind of happened. And I know what happened. I went away from what was working, right? I started worshiping my successes. Right? And I found myself, I started with 1 panic attack, and then it led to 2 panic attacks and 3. And then it was where I was in a constant panic attack from the time I woke up to the time I went to sleep. And I literally was thinking about killing myself at night, laying in the bed, like considering like, well, you know, because I just wanted the pain to stop.
Isolation.
That's the first thing we do is we isolate from the people that we know are going to call us out. It's kind of like that buddy system. Right. You look at the military, they have a buddy system. Why? Because it works.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that humans in general love to tell people only the piece of themselves that is needed in that context. It would take, the average person would probably need 5 or 6 people together to get an actual comprehensive look of who they are.
Powerful.
And I think in recovery, we have to have our people to know who we are, because if not, what are we going to do? We're going to isolate, right? And if we don't have someone to call us out on that behavior, we will always go back to what we think works, and it's the substances.
Familiarity, you know, and
it's the checkout, right?
Yeah.
It's the you know, that the substances give us, right? And what is that, right? Like it's fear.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you boil it down, right? Like it's all fear. What is anxiety? It's fear, right? It's the biological response to, I don't know how this is going to play out. And I think that takes out more people. Like they say resentment is the #1 offender. No, it's not. It's fear, right? It's living your life in fear of things that probably will never happen.
James Clear wrote a fantastic book about behavior called Atomic Habits, which a lot of people are familiar with. And something that was really interesting, what he said about identity and how if somebody smokes a lot of cigarettes every single day, what do you call them, Zach?
Smoker.
If somebody plays musical instruments every day,
musician.
And you see where I'm going with that. That identity piece was huge for me, because I said I am a drinker, I am a smoker, I am a drug addict, I am a loser was a big one for me, because I would look myself in the mirror and not like what I was seeing there. How do you work with people with the role of identity?
Oh man, that is so good, right? Because in reality, you'll never get sober unless you realize you hate yourself, right?
Yeah.
You know, like you will never stay sober. And when you talk about bottoms, right? What was your bottom? And people talk about, I lost my job, right? My wife left me. I fell down the steps drunk. I lost my job. Bullshit. Right. The bottom is when you look in the mirror and you hate who you see. It's the emotional realization that you have wasted every opportunity given to you. You are the reason that your life is in shambles. I talk a lot about this in treatment, right? Like if someone comes to my res, right, and I'll run some groups, like I tell them, if there's one thing you can get out of here, it's the belief, the understanding that you are the reason you're here, right? If your mom is why you're here, or that police that picked on you, or that teacher that made fun of you in school, or the bully, if that is your reason, you will never get well.
100%. And that's a hard pill to swallow.
It's the hardest pill.
Yeah.
Like that is literally getting punched in the solar plexus.
Yeah, for sure. It took me a long time to digest that one. But the wonderful thing is once I finally like hit rock bottom enough times to realize that, it gave me a map to how to move forward in my life.
So we do this little thing. I call it +1 -1. It's one of my favorite groups I run, right? And
Yeah.
not to get too far off, but I love this. So, and I'll do it super quick. +1 -1, right? I'll say I have 12 people in the room, right? And I'll say on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think you are? Not your looks, the value of you as a person, right? On a scale of 1 to 10. And then they'll go around. And of course, people say, I'm an 8, I'm a 9, right? And I'm like, you're an 8 in treatment with 2 DUIs, no car, no house, no savings account. You're an 8 because someone swiped right on you on Tinder, right? Like that's why you think you're an 8. But the point of it is then we go and I tell them, none of you are above a 4. Like that's kind of the punchline, and half of them hate me and the other half laugh, but there's truth to it. We'll go and we'll write up everything on the board that could make a person, right? So like family of origin, education, your ability to make money, your personality, your physical appearance, right? Your belief system, right? Like everything. And then the point of it is, okay, so your substance abuse or your mental health, right? Like if you got major depression and bipolar, that's probably like a 1 on a scale of 1 to 10 on mental health, right? Like you're not doing so hot on this.
Right.
So you go and you look at it all and then you average that all together. Okay, well, what's the point of that? The point is +1 -1. It means that if I'm a 4, the only thing that I'm going to attract into my life is 3s to 5s. The only person that's going to be in a relationship with me is a 3 to a 5. They might look like a 9.
Right.
When you average their score, it's a 3 to a 5. What type of job am I going to be able to get? A 3 to a 5. What type of friends, right? And the point of all that is to take accountability for exactly where I am in life. And then we go on to the solution. What is the solution? Well, the solution is the law of averages, right? If I'm sitting in a math class, I have 4 tests, and the teacher says, you can make up one of your tests. And I get a 90, a 90, an 80, and a 50. Which one am I going to make up? 50.
Yeah.
Right? Why? Because if I bring the 50 to a 70, it's going to bring my average up more than my 80 to a 90. Right? So if you can get someone and you can get them to accurately identify where their weaknesses are, we so want to talk about their positives and avoid what they're not good at. I'm the opposite, right? Let's focus on what we're not good at. Okay, you're 100 pounds overweight. Well, instead of worrying about making a little more money, why don't we go lose 50 pounds? And I think if in that way, people can really start to make some changes to who they are and start to get some of that self-confidence where they don't hate who they see in the mirror. They're in control of it. They have a plan, and the plan's not to see their therapist once a week.
How do you boost people's self-esteem that are in the gutter? Because there's no boosting my self-esteem at that point. When I was in recovery center again, right? Like it felt like the lowest form of life on earth at that time,
I don't think you really can, right? I think that's some of the problem, right? If we look at some treatment out there, right? Substance abuse, mental health, I think sometimes they try to bolster the person up too much, right?
Okay.
And where like there's the saying of riding on the shoulders of giants, right? You hear that in the 12-step world a lot. And what they mean by that is are riding on the coattail of giants, riding on the shoulders of giants is like, again, back to community, right? It's back to like when your self-esteem is so low, it doesn't even register on the meter. Like, let's just go hang around some people that have some self-esteem, right? Like that's the start. Let's acknowledge that self-esteem even exists. Because you're right. There's nothing you can do for someone in that moment.
No, you can't.
No.
just time and energy and, consistency.
And
Uh,
being around role models, right? I think a
mhm.
lot of treatment is about that, right? It's about seeing that other people can do it. That's why a lot of people that work in treatment centers are sober people, right? That's why we hire them, right?
Right.
To show, to be the example that, hey, look, like you can stay sober and have a good life, right?
Mhm.
Like it's actually possible, because a lot of people don't believe it. They think it's a lie. I thought it was a lie.
Do you have any distinction between sobriety and being clean? I think
Yes.
because for me personally, I identify more with being clean.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you, if you'd have grabbed me in my first 5, 6, 7 years, I
Yeah.
would argue and do. Here's what I believe today: your recovery is your recovery. Whatever it means to you, who cares, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if you're someone, for example, I know someone who had a really bad opiate problem,
Mm-hmm.
but they can drink, right? Like, and they drink once a month, and it's completely fine. Who cares? I know people who had an alcohol problem and now they can smoke a little bit of weed, right? Like early on, I would have had a big issue with that. The longer I'm around, the more I believe if you're happy with where your life is,
Mm-hmm.
right, then you're in recovery, right? In a sense. Now, is there, does it depend on what groups you run with? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Like you can't smoke weed and go into a NA meeting and talk about being sober,
Right.
right? But if that's not your thing and you're happy with where your life is, then more power to you. That's a success, in my opinion, until that thing starts to cause you harm, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the caveat, is that can you do it without it causing you harm over time? And there are absolutely people out there that can 100%.
Got it. I Speaking for myself, I think gratitude is the foundational starting point. Whether you had a TBI, whether you had somebody come up and even like stab you with a knife or like whatever, if you're recovering from alcohol and drugs, it's interesting how gratitude seems to be the only thing you can do at that
Yeah.
time, or like the foundational point of
Oof,
life.
man, I love that. And here's where I think I have a big thing on words. That's kind of my thing, right? Is it's one of many of my things, is that so many people misuse words, and I say misuse them
Yeah.
in the sense that they're doing it to the best of their ability, right? They're
Right.
not doing it on purpose, but they just don't
Mhm.
know, right? So
Right.
and gratitude is one of them, where people confuse gratitude and being thankful, right? For
Mhm.
me, gratitude is action. It is a action word,
Love it.
right? Like I show my gratitude. And you are right. Oh my God, it is the center of someone living a good, productive, healthy life. Whether you have mental health, substance abuse, or you're just a good old normie person, right? Like if
Right.
gratitude is the center component to being happy and fulfilled. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. Okay. So gratitude, right? I'm grateful for my mom, right? And
Right.
I am, right? But you can't see it, but it's mama's boy, right?
Yeah.
All
Right.
tattooed on my hand, right? Like my mom is my world. Okay. So in my addiction and in my craziness, I would go months without speaking to her. She'll get the phone call that I've overdosed or that I've wrecked my car or, I'm dying, right? Like
Right.
by the police, and she has like trauma from that, right? We've
Yeah.
talked a lot about this. So what is my gratitude? My gratitude is that I talk to my mom 3 days a week, right?
Hmm.
And I've done that for the last 15 years, right? So how do
Yeah.
I show my mom I'm grateful for her? By showing up,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
If I'm grateful for my recovery, what does that mean? It means that I am doing something active
Yeah.
every day in my recovery.
Yeah. I think you're right with linguistics and stuff like that. It can get so mystified, mystifying for people, because
Yeah.
when I talk about meditation and how it changed my life, you know, there's a million different ways that people think of a monk sitting up on a, like somewhere in the Himalayas, and it
Right.
just doesn't seem attainable to
Yep.
the people. They're like, gratitude, like that's just so vague. But you're right. It can be, it's about trying to explain to people, and this sometimes is the most difficult thing that I do, is try to explain to people that these little concepts are yours. You know, it's how you interpret it, but this is the general idea. It's kind of like
Yes.
saying, like, fruits are good for you.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Which fruit, right?
Yeah.
Which fruit are you going to eat? So,
How is it good for me? Right.
right.
Like,
Yeah.
no, I totally get it, man.
Yeah, I'm just real curious about your like kind of what kind of research you got involved in with your programs, and like what your unique personal blueprint that you want to put on this field of addiction.
Because my background is opioids, right? My
Mhm.
entire educational career, my time in the world of academia, I kind of tailored my study around opioids, right? Like the opioid crisis, right? So
Right.
that is where I stayed through my undergrad and my master's from Wake and then into my PhD. So when I was asked what I wanted to do my dissertation on, right? It's something about opioids.
Mhm.
Well, right, if you know about a dissertation, which you do, right? Like you have to pick something that fills a gap in the literature,
Right.
right? And through my school, it had to be something that was about social change.
Hmm.
So it evolved, it evolved, it evolved. I knew I wanted to do opioids. And then I kind of latched on to non-fatal overdoses, right? Like the people that overdose and don't die. I've overdosed 5 times,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
so I'm dealing with people that are overdosing, and then, okay, they overdose. And then the next day it's just like, oh yeah, everything's normal. And it's like, no, you just almost died yesterday,
Hmm.
you know?
Hmm.
So I picked, that was my population of people. And then what I ended up doing was I looked at anxiety, depression, and then health insurance, what type of health insurance they had. And then I looked at how did that predict the frequency of their non-fatal overdose,
Mm.
right? So to qualify for the study, they had to have an opioid use disorder. They
Yep.
had to have at least one non-fatal overdose. And
Hmm.
then we looked at their severity of their anxiety, their severity of their depression, and then what type of health insurance they had. And I got some crazy, interesting results, like really crazy. At the end of the day, anxiety and depression had no bearing, no statistical correlation
Hmm.
to the frequency of non-fatal overdoses. Insurance was significant, it was significant, statistically significant. So then I did a post hoc on the insurance, and man, it was wild. Basically, if you had Medicaid, you were more likely to have an increased number of non-fatal overdoses than if you did not have insurance.
I don't even know how to process
It
that.
man, I'm gonna tell you, it took a lot, and there's a lot of I could continue this research, and I've
Yeah.
thought about it, right? Kind of going deeper into the rabbit hole and maybe
Yeah.
doing a qualitative study. I mean, I have my reasons why I think that is. Why is someone on Medicaid? Well, they probably already have a substance use disorder,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
then so there's that component, and then there's also the component of the more we give, the more people are not grateful. And that is a
Oh,
political statement. I understand that, right? But you see it, people, the more we give them, the more they're reliant and the more they're entitled to it,
right. Yeah.
right? And I'll give you a story of that. At Real Recovery, I remember the worst clients were always scholarship clients. Why is that?
Mm.
Shouldn't the scholarship client, and by scholarship, I mean staying for free or a significantly reduced amount,
Right.
shouldn't they be more grateful and respectful?
You would think so.
but that's never the case. Maybe 1 out of 10 would be the exemption. But the rule is that the more you give, most of the time, the more someone creates an entitlement to the giving.
I see.
I mean, it's psychology, right? I mean, you could dig down into that. So I think that's some of it too, right? Is people are like, oh, well, I got Medicaid. Who cares what it costs, right? If I overdose and it costs $20,000, doesn't matter to me. I'm not paying for it. If that kind of and there's more to it, but it was definitely interesting. The higher the quality of insurance, the lower the frequency of non-fatal overdose.
I'll have to pick that one apart. Cool. Well, I appreciate you sharing. And, Dr. Miller, GED to PhD. I mean, that's just in itself is crazy to think about. So I appreciate you, man. And thank you for coming on here. If you could share with the listeners how to get in contact with you.
Yeah, right now I just jumped back into Instagram. It's literally Dr. Z on Facebook. It's the same thing, Zack Miller. Or you can go on to www.shc.health. That is my company's website, and I have an email contact on there.
Cool. Well, awesome having you on.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it, Dr. Miller.